today to see our panel presented today by Pale Global. Today we'll be talking about Emerging Markets 2013, learn from top gaming companies how to increase your revenue in emerging regions. So we do have a few slight changes to the program. Wargaming will not be speaking today, but we do actually have Boeing from Tencent. So we are very, very pleased with our lineup today. Just a quick overview, and then Peter Warman, he's the CEO of Newzoo, and GamesIndustry.com will actually be moderating the panel today, so he'll go a little bit more into detail. But just a quick introduction, we have Raul Sandhill, Chief Marketing Officer for Reloaded Games. Next to him on the left is Jeremy Snook from Microsoft Game Studios. Then we have Larry Koh, VP of Kabam. And we have Boeing from Tencent, so VP of Tencent. So if we could all give them a round of applause, kind of welcome them for coming. And if you have any cell phones or pagers, we do ask that you turn those off at this time. Thank you so much. Questions, there will be Q&A at the end, so you'll have about 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. Thank you, enjoy the panel.
Good morning, everyone. It's my honor to moderate this panel. I want to thank Heather. I did this last year for the first time. I guess I did something right because I'm invited back. And I'm honored, when I look at the panel, I'm honored to be here. I live in a small, maybe even emerging market called the Netherlands, Amsterdam. And I head up a company called Newzoo. And I guess why I'm here is because we've always been covering a mix of countries which are called emerging countries. Turkey, Asia, in addition to the US. So we face the first open question: what makes a market an emerging or a growth market, and when does it stop to be a growth market, or fall into that category? Larry, do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I think for myself, we've been doing a lot of sort of deep dives into where these growth markets are, and I was actually pretty blown away by some of the recent studies that our internal team just did, where I think pretty much every territory that has smartphone devices is exponentially growing right now. We're seeing some phenomenal growth rates. So I think back to your question of the difference between emerging and growth markets. I think territories that have been considered before being emerging, like Russia, Brazil, some of these southeastern territories, those are all seeing triple-digit growth rates in mobile gaming right now. So when I see opportunities like that, and that's where it's been super exciting for us as a company to sort of look into how we can sort of tap into those growth opportunities. And when new markets it's not being considered growth, I guess when it stops plateauing out, I guess. But I think based on the current trajectory, even countries like Japan, where everyone hears stories about how that region is just blowing up in mobile gaming, smartphone penetration is only 30% there still. So that just tells me there's even in big territories like Japan, there's a tremendous amount of growth opportunities there as well too.
I think we should get rid of the term emerging market and call it explosive market or something, guys.
Yeah, okay, explosive market. We'll do a vote at the end and see if we can think of a new one.
I think we also have to divorce ourselves from the economic theory definition of emerging markets. In 2005, we were publishing Night Online in Turkey, and we were seeing 60,000 CCUs. People converting at $30 ARPPUs and 9% conversion of paying in Turkey, and we were having a very, very difficult time pushing that game out in North America. So I think we will divorce the fact that what economic theory says is emerging, because for free-to-play PC, I think Turkey, Russia, Brazil are actually very advanced markets, very mature markets. And some of the other countries which are probably more dominant by console, UK, US, Canada, would be considered emerging in respect to what's happening on the PC side.
Yeah, I think you can look at it from if you want to dive into the working of it and get emerging markets versus growth markets, it sounds like you're finding that the emerging markets is really more about the overall social, political, and economic, whereas a growth market like the US, I would say the US is a growth market frequently, right? We've already got the technology base, the stable economy, or roughly stable. But
Absolutely.
And Bo, how do you tend to look at? Do you distinguish between mature market, explosive markets?
I think one perspective I can add is, it's not just a geographic concept that emerging versus mature. I think it's more about how users get the game. In mature market, pretty much, the user are more sophisticated and the infrastructure is more established. So pretty much, it's more like a content driven. You just take care of the high quality content and people will come to find out. However, in emerging markets, you often see, you need to pay a lot of attention to the channel, to the distribution, to the customer service, because people don't necessarily have the knowledge to know what kind of game would be the right one they want to choose. Sometimes they just pick, the one pushed to them. So if we follow that idea, even China right now has, by size, is over 10 billion for the online gaming. But still, there are a lot of young and new gamers. They need to have a very good, channel to reach them. And also, we can see like what happened on mobile right now. Even in a mature market like Korea, but still, like KakaoTalk, that's the #1 popular mobile messenger social network in Korea. You can see, a lot of people are the first-time gamer in Korea. They start to appreciate mobile games through the introduction by Kakao. So that's also can be, kind of like categorized as, our emerging market, even it's geographically it's in Korea. So that's how I'm feeling about that. So definitely, just in China, it would be great to say like if you have a trusted local partner to take care of all the customer distribution issues or the infrastructure issues. So.
Yes, it's more about attracting new gamers, so finding growth, and regardless of region, it can be in a very mature market.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That's another one to vote on at the end, I guess.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. All hands up. Okay. Okay. Yeah, you got a veto. Jeremy just vetoed that one.
No, I liked it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, that is. And just for a snapshot, what country surprised you the most? If you look back last year, the performance, what country jumped out and surprised you? Is there have you got a specific experience on you?
We had experience. So for years we published, in Brazil and Russia ourselves, and then with the APP Reloaded, it was a very complex game with the infrastructure and the localization needs. So we decided to license it, and I was I was not very bullish, but we have great partners in Brazil. We work very closely with Hoplan. And when I saw the first month's data, I was very surprised because the game is nearly 5 gigabytes in size. And I always thought in a market like that, how will they get over the hump of getting people to download it? And that was very surprising to me. I think Brazil to me has opened up an open mind to the extent that now we can try games which are 7 gigs, 9 gigs. And that's what we do. That's our business, the client downloadable games. And I'm very happy to see the traction we got in Brazil with the large, hardcore game.
Yeah, so the old, the stereotypic thinking of they don't have bandwidth and everything, it's going so fast that it's all sort of that's past. When it comes to the definition of finding new gamers, so if you have again people, you attract people, you don't really know from the start where they'll be coming from. Sometimes you're surprised by countries or regions or groups of gamers that jump on your game. Have you got something like that? Also, regardless of region.
Yeah, I would say what surprised us the most was last year was Korea, and end of last year and early this year is definitely Japan. And we know that Japanese market is very unique in the sense, mobile is big and feature phones still dominate the market, but just still the scale of one single game, how much they can do, it's still amazing to us. And we recently visited Japan and talked to local gaming companies over there. So you see Japan's market in the console maybe in decline, but since going very well on mobile, and particularly in the new smartphone platform, and the model there is quite interesting, very unique from all the other markets. So and also we see they're just even very mature market like Japan, still you got a lot of first-time gamers got signed up with very easy gameplay and very easy access to the game platform. So that's the part really give us some positive.
Speaking of Japan, we launched globally we launched a game on Xbox Live Arcade at the end of last year called Happy Wars. It was a free-to-play game. And when we looked at Japan, we were surprised by that because Japan accounted for 1% of our DAUs and 9% of our revenue. But when we looked at our whales on that game, 30% of them came from Japan. So very small, but very, very fanatical. And it's a nice little surprise.
Larry, what sticks in your mind most?
Yeah, I mentioned Japan earlier, but Korea as well too. But I think for us, Russia actually was hugely surprised. I think for folks that follow Command, we were making a big push into mobile all of last year. And we've been pretty fortunate to have gotten some of our titles to be top grossing titles. But one of the things that we were sort of thinking in Russia sort of emerged as this territory where there was a pretty strong iOS penetration and reports of customers having high engagement and high monetization metrics. So recently we ended up localizing Kings of Camelot into Russia, into Russian languages, and we've quickly begun to see how that game scale up to being a top 10 downloaded game in Russia. I think it's top 20 grossing only within a matter of weeks. And the unit metrics that we're seeing has just been almost or just as good as some of the unit metrics we see in the Western markets.
Question for Jeremy also. In our data, we provide all these companies with data that Japan has surpassed the US in the Google Play Store spending. We all know that. But it will take now 3 months from now, it will surpass the US in iOS spending. And I think that comes sometimes to a surprise to people in America as well. But Japan's going to spend more on Apple devices, Apple games, in about 3 months' time. And it's cool to see that there are indeed some Western companies that are succeeding to gain traction on those platforms within the top 10 list of local titles. So it's a good way. And regarding Brazil, that's for you, Jeremy, we see that Brazil has grown so fast that they're actually not skipping the complete console phase, but they're sort of grabbing the tail of the console phase and actually buying a lot of Xboxes and PlayStations because the whole middle class has gotten doubled their budgets in 2 years' time, and they always dreamed of having the money to possess a console. And I don't know if it's in your experience, but in our data and stuff, we see an enormous jump in the console market as well.
Absolutely. I mean, all of Latin America it's a hotbed for a console opportunity, but specifically Brazil, we looked at the digital game distribution in Brazil was over 300% over last year, 2011, 2012. So it's a huge market. Another game application we launched at the holidays last year was Karaoke on Xbox Live. And it's, as you'd expect, a singing service. And when we looked at our top regions through February and into March, the U.S. was pretty big. It was the top single market for karaoke. But when we looked at Latin America, Brazil plus Mexico equaled the U.S. So a lot of people singing in South America, in Latin America. I think part of it too is that we actually had, and this might lead into another question, but we had people in those markets who were very fanatical about bringing karaoke in a more localized fashion to those markets. We did a lot of work with our back-end song provider Stingray and got some regionally specific and appropriate music that people really enjoyed singing. So there was not only music, which is a global language, but a lot of focus on regional music too.
Yeah. When it comes to before localizing into every country, have you ever experienced a sudden, that people, even regardless of a language difference, you see a growing community suddenly from a small country that you didn't even think of, and they're playing your game, and then it made you decide to localize in a country that you didn't have on your strategy map. Have you had an experience like that?
We have a very funny case study for that. So I talked about earlier with Night Online in Turkey. The game wasn't in Turkish, it was in English. We launched in 2004, and till we sunset our side of the game in 2011, the game was in English. It was probably the largest MMO in Turkey. And when we got the license for Runes of Magic for Turkey, we localized it in Turkish, and the people didn't think it was cool because it was local, and they would rather play the German or the English version, and that to us was a pretty great experience. So we have a platform now, and I talk to our partners, and they all tell me, you have no Turkish traffic, want to put the game on your platform, should we localize it? I said, no, you don't need to. Gaming in some ways is like music. If you took the Beatles and localized their songs in Turkish, I'm not sure it would really work. Though I think there are people who disagree with me, but I think really fun games, or games which can appeal to a certain demographic, they don't really need a language. And the community, especially in MMO, creates their own content through chat or through forums, and they can be doing that in their own language. But
everybody talks about mobile. It's still a PC console that, well, everybody knows PC is a dominating screen when it comes to earning money. What differences have you seen, or do you have interesting experiences going into a country with online and mobile, and making choices that to do one country mobile, the other one online, or yeah, maybe that's something for Larry.
Well, so for us, our business, there's a lot of sort of new titles that we're developing on mobile, but a large portion of our business still comes from the web. And we personally still have seen a tremendous amount of growth opportunities as a North America-based company around growing your web business in like the European countries. So that's been like one of our team's focus in terms of trying to provide much more richer localized events. Instead of just having a game out there which is localized, it's actually providing localized events that meets cultural needs and all that kind of stuff. But from when you think of like countries like Korea, where we are seeing this tremendous growth opportunity in mobile, we have to think of ways to tap into those opportunities. A little bit more different.
Is it easier to enter into new markets on mobile or online? Is one of them both easier, or is that?
It's easy to enter because all you have to do is just check off one of those country boxes. But if you want to be successful, you really need to understand the channels, the payment options, especially if you're operating like a web-based business or a client-based business. Even with our, like I told you about, just recently launching things like Camelot in Russia, we localize it, but we know there's still a ton of opportunities for us to develop a much richer experience in Russia with the Kings of Camelot game. So, yes, that anyone can have their games launched. I think with the platform services that Apple and Google and some of these mobile platform partners provide, it is easier. But to become successful, I do think you need to have a really deep understanding of the local communities, how you run localized events.
Boy, you're on the receiving end, you said. What do you see, mobile online, the platform? What's easier for companies to enter the markets if you assist your partners?
Mobile right now is smaller, relatively speaking, compared to PC online, but probably it's easier for developer to go because what Apple and Google provides really, you don't need to worry too much about payment and the access to users. So yeah, I would say definitely there's tremendous opportunity over there on mobile side, and particularly but the challenge is on PC it's quite stable environment that for a long time how the industry is structured and who's going to take care of the platform function, who's going to take care of the different layers. In mobile, maybe still may take some more time to become more established. So it's still, I would say, at least for now, this is still quite a dynamic. You need to figure out who should be your right partner at different levels, take care of functionality.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a great time to be a gamer. There's so many ways you can play games, go at home, wide variety of devices. Obviously, a lot more people get involved in gaming, so as developers and publishers, it's in our best interest. But to echo what Boba said, when you look at the percentage of time people spend gaming and the devices they spend it on, it's still, tablets are still a very small minority of that total time spent pie. I mean, most people are playing games on console or PC, so still a large portion of revenue to be driven by console, by PC, by AAA games. I would not say that console is dead just yet. I think we still are seeing very robust sales and revenue predictions for the future on the big stuff too.
It's behind the entertainment screen. The entertainment screen will always be there. So,
I think the interesting shift is also going to come where so far content or IP has been built for PC and console, and then it goes queue for mobile. But I think I've got 2 kids, 6 and 4, and they're still not ready to play APB, but I let them play Candy Crush Saga or some stuff on the mobile. I think now content is going to be created for the mobile, and then you will probably do a port onto a PC. And I think that transition for me is going to be very exciting. My 6-year-old, he's so used to touchscreen, and I pulled out my Xbox and I pulled out the Nintendo and let him have a go at it. He doesn't get it because he can't touch it.
You get a lot of fingerprints on your TV screen.
Yeah, he does. He's not used to seeing the Mac. And for me, growing up, I never had a PC, never had a console. I grew up in India. I played our first game on a BBC Spectrum machine. When I wrote the code for it way back in 82 or 83. But when I saw the first Windows-based icon system, it was a moment of revelation. I'd seen Jesus. You could move your mouse and you could click things and things would open up. It was amazing. But I think that's going to be the shift. The next generation, or not the next. I'm 40, but my kids and their generation. I think that's going to be the next wave of consumers, and how they would adapt to IP. And that's, I think, a lot of us should be spending money in doing R&D and figuring out what's going to happen. Will IP flow from console or PC into mobile, or will it flow from mobile into? I think the good part of the discussion would be what's the emerging platform. I think the growth platform is going to be mobile and tablets, and probably the cash cow moving into dog. BCG Matrix is probably going to be console and PC.
Yeah. Let's put some. In Holland, they localized the Infinity Blade into Holland pretty late because we're sort of fun or dramatic examples where you made big changes and nothing happened, or you made a small change and it made a world of difference. Larry, I see you.
I can speak to a small change that made a world of a difference. The example is, I'm responsible for a team overseeing Dragons and Atlantis, which is localized in 15 plus languages. And the team, we think of ourselves as an entertainment service company. We try to keep our games continuously live and running for many years. But for the last several years for Dragons and Atlantis, we were running events. It was all localized and everything into all different languages and territories and stuff. But all these events were being run by our team in North America. So when you have a team in North America running events, they tend to run events that are very, very convenient more for their own personal Pacific time zone. And we started getting all this feedback from players in Europe, players in Latin American knowledge, asking hey, these tournaments that you guys run always ends at 11 p.m. Pacific time. And that time is not a convenient time for me. I'm never going to compete against these West Coast or the Central Time Zone US-based players because you're setting up your events to end at those times. So we took that feedback we started creating more localized events and tournaments where even just simple thing as just having the time zone, the times of these events ending at their particular time zones, and we were just phenomenal improvements in engagement and revenue. So I think that's an example where small little tweak. There's nothing really innovative except for just adjusting and just catering towards different time zones. I think that's an example of like us, sort of trying to expand our thinking of instead of just constantly thinking of operating as a North American company, trying to operate more as a worldwide entertainment service company. That's something that we're constantly trying to push for.
Does anyone else have something like that?
We're working on something now as well with trying to create the APB franchise for China. We would love to be in China, and just because the game is so hardcore and you can kill cops, it makes it a huge problem. It is true. We've spoken to a lot of people, we've showed the game to a lot of people. Korea has a problem because moms, which formed the alliance, a group over there, they won't let anyone sign up our game. So we've announced Vendetta, which is a new title where we've essentially removed the aspect of cop killing. And we've kind of been working with the consultants who are telling us if this is what would be acceptable in China and Korea probably. And that is socio-political, right, having an impact, because the game is what, the top game on Steam here, but nobody touch it. It's probably the biggest PC market in the world.
If you had to mention a country, which country is outside of what we've all discussed, a country that's a next market that I would want to go into, or you've had your first successes? I know of companies that have success in the United Arab Emirates, for instance. What's a growth country that's on your target, but not so secret that you cannot tell it here? Southeast Asia.
You got it right. I think we may take a little bit different approach. We're thinking that the most important country is the US. And the simple reason is just, the market size in Southeast Asia or in whatever other countries are too small. It doesn't make that much sense for you to focus on all your effort. And in the US, we see tremendous, the whole industry is shifting to the new structure, and there could be, way bigger opportunity than you spend on, what's so-called emerging markets. Just my personal opinion.
Can anyone shout out a country? Anyone got some questions?
China and US.
Yeah, you're big emerging markets, China and US. Good.
Well, we covered Brazil and Russia pretty well in Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia.
And I think that's always our web-based games business is still a large portion of our business. Like for me, like Latin America is actually a market that's actually really exciting.
And the definition for emerging markets is explosive growth areas that tap into new gamer groups, something like that. Let's try to write it up as something that appeals, and then we'll bring it to the market and change it. And then the next year, this panel will have a different title, hopefully, because it was you recognize it. I would like to open it up for questions.
Hi, my name is Michael Levikoff. I'm in the LTC St. Petersburg, Russia. Quick question. Which country was most complicated for you to penetrate in your experience?
Okay.
The question of which country was the hardest for us, I would say North America. US has been the hardest country for us.
And why?
The user acquisition cost is extremely high. We are a PC online free-to-play MMO company that does hardcore client downloadable games, and we just don't really have the budget of what Microsoft or Activision or Electronic Arts and now League of Legends have. When your competitor is buying traffic at $4.50 or $6 or launching with a $100 million campaign featuring Robert Downey Jr., it is just very hard to get discovered in that market. And we have tried all kinds of things. I made my former CEO run for governor to hope to get some news and get a news cycle going, but that's very hard.
On the PC side, China's pretty tough.
And for us, I think just from a personal experience, I think I mentioned Latin America is a very, very interesting territory for us. It's I think internally there's been a lot of discussions about how to actually be successful in that market, because you come up with different pricing strategies as well too. So I'd say that's been one where, because we've been mostly North America and Western Europe focused, it's been challenging for us to think completely about how to penetrate that market.
Before I'm going to thank the panel and everyone, I would like to Albert, you would like to close it off because it's almost 11.
Thank you everyone that you came here. I just want to say you guys that our platform is working with our companies, and we're trying to help all this information that we talk about, especially about those how the monetization, localization goes, and all that great information. We are helping our publishers, we're helping the game developers to get the payment options, localized payment options, so the consumers can be able to pay, their games. So that's what our company does. And thank you again for being here, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great show.